So just got a couple quick slides about who we are. It's our cool new logo. So we're a production agency. We do a lot with New South Wales government, big brands here out of Sydney, New South Wales. We do a lot of work out of Melbourne as well. We do quite a bit nationally, but we've worked with the likes of Airbnb through to Sunrise, through to some Australian brands. We do everything from strategy to creative to production, through to helping clients amplify their content. So it's not just about great content, it needs to be seen. And we're always experimenting and dog fooding. So there's an old saying, never trust a thin chef. So a chef that's not tasting his own food, they're alluding to what sort of chef would that be. So we're always testing things. We're always trying some new things. So that's a nice segue into today, talking about 360 VR video. But we've also had lots of great viral successes online with videos for clients. There's our show reel. I won't bore you with that now. Today is all about introduction to 360 VR, 360 video production. I'm just going to touch through what today is about. So I just want a bit of an overview of what is 360 video. Some of the participants today may have already have seen it, but we're going to do a little bit of an overview. We're going to look at a range of ways to capture 360 video. There's a couple watch outs. We're going to look at some top level examples. We'll also be sharing the deck as well, because once you get the deck at home, you can then click through the links and look at it in a little bit more detail. Bandwidth is limited with COVID. Everybody's at home streaming Netflix, doing webinars, teaching kids from school. So by sharing that deck later, it'll allow you to have a rich experience in your own home. We'll talk through some key platforms and where it's being used at the moment. And I think a key thing for platforms is accessibility. So making sure people can get to this content. I think having technology that's only accessible to somebody with a $50,000 computer and a $100,000 set of glasses isn't going to have a lot of global take up. So I think this is where YouTube and Facebook are leading the way. We'll talk through some basic workflows and we'll have some Q&A at the end. So table those questions. So what is 360 video? So 360 video, it's exactly what it says. It's a full 360 view of a scene. So what's happening? The cameras are capturing that full scene in full 360. So it's not like a traditional 2D capture where the director or the DOP controls what you're looking at. It's actually capturing everything. So there's nowhere to hide for 360 video. It's a very interesting space and takes a little bit of thinking to get your head around. I'll show you a camera here. So that there is a 360 camera. So it's two fisheye lenses. It's two really wide angle lenses that's capturing the whole scene, everything from underneath to above to every angle around. And what that means, it means the viewer can then choose where to look and what to look at. Now, today's chat could be contentious. It's not true VR. There's two schools of thoughts. VR is, the traditional school of thought with VR is computer generated 3D models, kind of like video game worlds. I'd call that true VR. So this is 360 video, but it's adaptable to that VR technology. So Oculus Rift, Samgung Gear, and a range of other VR platforms as well. But the great thing about it, it's a fantastic way to show real spaces. So it's not a made up fantasy space, it's a real space. So I think this opens up some great opportunities for the likes of being stuck in COVID now. So there's some examples here on this slide where we've got real spaces being shown and having virtual tours done by the likes of the British Museum. We've got the Sistine Chapel there. There's some links that you can have a look in the final presentation. And the National Air and Space Museum. These are three really great examples on how they're using 360 VR video for virtual tours. Now, if everything's working here, I wanted to just show you the National Air and Space Museum. So this is a 360 scene. So this is after it's been shot. It's on YouTube and it's easy to be viewed by anyone on any device. And YouTube makes it really easy on a mobile. This is desktop, but on mobile, there's a button there to turn it into full VR mode. But as you can see, it's super easy just to look and explore that whole scene. So it's not just pointing a camera in one direction and going, yay, look at that part of the space rocket. It's thinking about in your pre-production, that whole 360 scene. So it's probably a little bit more like theatre really. So we've got that full scene on on stage for theatre. Now, as mentioned, there's some different production approaches. So I think in that pre-production planning phase, you've got to really think about what you want to show, what things you don't want to show. And there's some technical considerations around lighting, what have you as well. Because a traditional camera setup, you're just exposing for one scene versus 360. One side of the frame might be really, really bright and one side might be really dark. Now, here's a couple 360 cameras. They look like alien tech. There's a few here. There's a couple top left. That's a device that you can just plug in and start using your mobile straight away. We've got one that looks like a deep sea creature. It's an older 360 rig. So 360 video and video capturing has been around sort of 5, 6, 7 years now. But now it's a nexus of technology, fantastic broadband speeds, and the cost of some of the technology is starting to come down. So previously you needed really expensive gear, really expensive computers to play it back, really expensive headsets. So now it's a lot more accessible. And the form factors come down quite a bit. Top right there, you can see a 360 camera stuck on a drone to open up 360 aerial applications. And people are also putting them on small remote control cars. So that means you can then drive a remote control camera or a remote control car through a space and just get this beautiful seamless walkthrough. So there's a few different ways to access and capture 360. It's only up to your imagination. Well, there's a couple there at the bottom. So what 360 is, bottom left, you can see it's really using a range of different camera angles to capture that full scene. So early on, people would stitch together 4, 6, 8, 24 GoPros. They'd build those into a rig, and then in post-production, you'd have to stitch together 4, 6, 8, 24 camera angles. But now the stitching's usually done in camera. Bottom left there, the one with it looks like an alien robot or a K9 robot from Doctor Who. That's the new gen cameras. They'll do the stitching inside the camera itself. So once you get to post-production, you can just start editing. And on the last two slides here, there's a few ways you can capture 360. So some people are still doing it with the likes of A7 IIIs and what have you. They're matching the lenses, they're matching the settings, doing a lot of testing, but then in post-production, they're doing that stitching. And stitching was traditionally a really big barrier. A couple of examples of some rigs here. We're going to go from expensive rig down to accessible entry-level rigs. So I looked at researched this rig a few years ago. It's something that would be used for, think of probably less so in Australia, but top-end global sports, so NBA, NFL. So I think the US, where they're putting billions of dollars into sponsorship deals and distribution rights and subscription numbers. This is 17 cameras filming in 12-bit RAW 444. So what that just means, it's capturing the highest possible footage at the highest possible rate. So in post-production, you've got the most ability for color correction or exposure correction or scaling, but there's going to be huge files. So something like 5 to 10 terabytes per hour just to capture with that device. So the whole post-production pathway is going to be very expensive, very complicated, and going to take a lot of top-end gear. And I actually think the days of this type of rig, unless it's a Discovery Channel or some sort of avatar type motion picture, I don't think we're going to see these used as much anymore. I think it's going to be more about these mid-level rigs. So there is some pricing available for these. This is the Insta 360. I think it's called the Pro 2. So it's got 6 lenses. So once again, same concept. It's just stitching 6 lenses. It's just mounting 6 lenses onto a body. And then inside, it's capturing 6 different angles and stitching it for you. So that post-production will be easy to manage. These can also support 3D 360, so that's kind of cool. You can get a sense of depth. We haven't explored that, produced that yet. We filmed an 8K 360 VR, but it depends on that use case. We haven't found anything compelling to physically use 3D on. We're keeping the eyes and ears out for the next opportunity, but it hasn't come up yet. But the great thing is this has a lot of connectivity. So all those antennas mean it can connect to your mobile there. You can live stream from it. So there's a range of great ways for you to monitor your signal, monitor your footage, monitor the scene and audio, and make sure that you're getting the optimum results. yeah, it's really interesting, and it's a very interesting place to be when working with talent as well. So you want to plan that 360 scene and brief your talent well in advance to make sure they're standing in the right spot or pointing to the right things to give the right cues. And the key thing is it's a bit more of a streamlined workflow, but at 8K, it's still moving a lot of data around. This is a great high-res 360/VR solution, mountable on drones, cars, remote control cars, what have you. This is the exciting piece. So this is an Insta 360 Pro as well. There's a range of different brands. Ricoh does a brand, GoPro's got a brand out now. These are just the ones we've been using and we're familiar with. They all do similar things and the principles are pretty much the same. So for between $400 to $700, that's Aussie dollars, you can start filming 5.7K 360 VR or be taking 18 megapixel 360 photos. So once again, remote monitoring. In this instance, it's got two lenses similar to what we looked at before. It's those two fisheye lenses that are then stitched in camera. It's got a great easy to use app that you just tether to your mobile phone. And you can live stream from it. That's the other great thing. So you can live stream from this to a suitable platform. So you can live stream from here, from the Insta 360. You could live stream into YouTube or to Facebook. A really great tool. But once again, just be aware, shooting and streaming in some of those large resolutions, you're going to be using a lot of data and you're going to be having some, maybe some broadband or mobile phone plan issues, depending on what sort of data plan you're on. But it's a really great entry-level piece of gear and it's super high quality. So now's a real nexus of the technology getting powerful and affordable, we're getting great broadband connections, and we're stuck at home with COVID, so people are starting to watch and enjoy more 360 VR content. Okay, the technology's not quite perfect. We can see here inside that red box, if you look closely, because it has a range of lenses, in this instance 2, there will be some stitch marks because it has to stitch and coordinate and collaborate or calibrate those images to be seamless. So it's not quite seamless yet. There's some ways you can reduce this in post-production. You can manually start to match and what have you in After Effects or Premiere Pro. But that's going to take a lot more time. But at the moment with these two lens setups, there is a little bit of a trade-off. But I think they're doing a really great job. So it's just a matter of if there is a stitch line, plan your scene around that, get a preview and make sure the stitch line's not maybe on someone's face or a key piece of area of focus in that scene, whether it's the front of a building or a sign or what have you. I said it can also be hard to handle mixed lighting. So one lens could be super bright, one lens could be super dark. So you're going to have a little bit of trouble starting to match those two scenes. So that's where that preview via the app on mobile phones is critical. You can play with your exposure. There's some manual exposure settings in video. There's always going to be a trade-off. You can't set left or right independently. There will be a little bit of a trade-off, and some of the devices will record those streams as 4 or 5 separate camera streams. So if you wanted to, you could come in and manually just grade each side of that scene or each lens of that scene. So if lens 1's really dark and lens 2's really light, in post-production you can take some extra time to match those. But I said there's a trade-off there with turnaround times and equipment, and you start to get very technical quite quickly. And the great thing is they do support, it's quite common for them to support raw photos. So in that instance, if you've got a really dark and light scene, taking a HDR or a raw photo will allow you a little bit more breathing room to control exposure, whether it's in the app or in something like Photoshop. So there are a range of options. I said it's not quite perfect. You can get some lens flares and things. And being such a wide-angle device, you can have some distortion and some stretching effects as you pan around the scene. So let's have a quick look at this isn't too bad. So they've planned their scene here with lots of space around the 360 camera. But if you had people in the scene or something up close, there can be some distortion lines. So straight lines can get a bit wonky. They've done a really great job here. That line's straight. And this is in low res. But yeah, there can be some funny distortions in there, so just be aware of that. You can't pull focus, so generally everything is in focus. And if you're walking or being mobile with these, there can be some vibration still. So a lot of them have inbuilt image stabilization. It's not perfect. It goes a great way to reducing some really jarring jitters, but just be aware of that. So if you wanted to take one of these handheld, do some testing and just be aware that those jitters for the viewer could be quite disruptive, might make them sick or ill, because the tech is still quite new for the viewers. Top level platforms. Just checking that we've still got everybody. Everyone's still alive, hasn't fallen asleep, which is great. I think personally the top platform's YouTube. YouTube makes it really easy to use this sort of technology. So the great thing is you can film it on your 360 camera. Those files can then be edited quite quickly, and then the edit platforms will export a file that you just simply load to YouTube. And as soon as it's in YouTube, it'll just work. YouTube will see that file or see it's a 360 file, and it will actually wrap that with that spatial data. And by spatial data, I mean it's not a flat image. So that's allowing those people to browse around up, down, left, right, behind them. YouTube supports up to 8K resolution. So it supports hyper high res 360 VR, which is really great. A lower res 360 VR video is going to be a lot softer. It's going to be lower quality. It's going to be less of an engaging experience. So the great thing about YouTube, they're supporting really high res files. And with a touch of a button on the YouTube mobile app, it's instantaneously VR compatible with VR glasses. And the other great thing is it's a global platform, so there's lots of traffic. So if you create some great 360 VR content, people can find it, the algorithm can push it, it can start to go a little bit viral. So it's a super handy tool. So no one really wants to make content that just sort of sits there and no one can find it or discover it. So I think YouTube gives you one of the best chances of being discovered. It's really simple, just upload and go. And YouTube also has some really great analytics. So viewership, viewer rates, where people are viewing from. And they used to have some 360 hot spots, so you could see where people were looking. They call them 3D heat maps. So just a couple little screen grabs here. So on the left there's a virtual reality channel on YouTube. It's a great channel. It surfaces and curates lots of top VR 360 video content. So it's a really great place to go and watch and get some inspiration or get some ideas. In the middle there, that's with the Fox, that's a computer-generated VR example, but that's what, in VR mode, what it'll look like. It turns that image into two separate images, a left and a right eye image. Underneath that white Fox, we've got just a screen grab, just a cell from a 360 video clip that a YouTube artist has done. And then top right there, you can see this is the heat map. So this is a flattened version of a 360 image, but you can see where people are looking. So a great thing about the YouTube analytics is you can double check that people are looking where you want them to look or absorbing the information you need them to absorb. And if they're not, you can do something about it. Bottom right there is an example of the Google Cardboard. So you can watch 360 VR video on any device, so mobile phone, tablet, desktop, laptop. Okay, you don't need any special gear. It's supported natively in YouTube right now, and you can just use the mouse to scroll around. But on mobile phone, through their app, you can hit the VR button and it turns it into a stereoscopic view. And with something as simple as a $5 pair of Google Cardboard, you can put that on and start enjoying 360 VR content. No need for $1,000 Oculus Rifts or anything fancy like that. Now, if you do have an Oculus Rift, it does support it. So that's the great thing. Whatever you do here on YouTube is supported on any device and any headset from cheap to very expensive. So it's a great way to start sharing and creating interactive 360 VR content. The second place to do it is Facebook. Facebook supports 360 photos, 360 video as well. There is a maximum resolution that Facebook will support. It's 4K, so not quite as high quality. It's still pretty simple. You can just upload and go. You can define the first scene you want people to see. We'll talk about that in a little minute because people are still quite new to this. They don't know where to look. So defining that first scene gives them a starting point so they just don't get confused or start to feel sick or click off. The analytics aren't quite as deep on Facebook. As Facebook itself, to get traffic and views, it relies a lot on paid now. So there's less search traffic, less organic traffic coming through. And just a screen grab there of what Facebook's 360 VR is looking like. So it's their search box on the left. Still a great range of content, but a little harder to find. I found it a little harder to navigate. And on the right, they're supporting it in a similar way to YouTube. So that's a 360 VR roller coaster. Give it a crack. It can get, watch that at home. It can get a little disorientating, but it's a really fun use case of 360 VR video. We'll touch on workflow, guys. So we're across the top level technology. We're across the top level platforms that will support this. Now, what's our workflow to making something in 360 VR video? The great thing is, it's way easier today than it's ever been. Now, the first big step is to plan and prepare your 360 scene. So think about your audience, your experience. Audio is going to be very important, and make sure you test it. So is it a walkthrough of a museum? And in which case, what are the key artworks you want to show in that museum? What's the exposure look like? Is one side of the museum darker than the other side of the museum? So just think these through. Give them a test. Create your production plan and brief any talent. So if talent's walking through a museum, the talent can stop and point at any key pieces of artwork, whether it's a Mona Lisa or a Rembrandt or a Picasso. So pre-production is critical. And as I said, the big piece is curating your scene. So you've got a 360 space. People can't look everywhere at once. It's going to be daunting for that viewer. So it's up to you to direct their attention. So maybe give them some key areas of interest. And maybe in the background, if they did have a look, it's a nice, tidy background. Maybe it's a part of the museum or part of the office tour or part of that real estate that's less important right now. But you're going to have like a key area of attention in each scene. So it could be a view. It could be, if you're selling a kitchen in a real estate video, maybe it's just sort of focusing on that front view and focusing on the kitchen. As I said, it's very hard for them to look everywhere at once. And consider some visual prompts in post-production. So on set, maybe you have a presenter or some talent talking through the scene and telling people what to look at. Here's the spa bath, here's the fireplace, here's the kitchen. But you can do some, you can use some basic prompts in post-production. So you can define the first scene that they see so they don't have to look everywhere. So the first thing that loads, they're going to see that fireplace, or they're going to see that fridge, or they're going to see that kitchen. You can define that in post-production. And remember, this is still quite new, so don't do the jarring jump cut. So don't cut like an action scene in a movie where you're jumping jarringly from scene to scene. So slow crossfades are the best ways to go. So it's all about that user experience. If the person viewing your content's not comfortable, they'll just quit and close out. So you want to make that as easy to digest as possible. In post, as I said, you can add some titles and graphics if need be. They're supported by the likes of Premiere Pro. You can easily put in titles and banners and graphics there. Generally, when you do film with a 360 camera, it will need to be on some sort of stand. So depending on the stitching, the stand may or may not be visible. So you can actually cover that tripod with what they call a nadir. So it's just a little logo that sits at the bottom of that 360 scene and blots out your tripod. And as I said, Premiere Pro natively supports 3D editing. So it's super easy to just import the files, start working. It has a 360 view in Premiere Pro, so you can pan around yourself and check your scene or start to define points of interest. And the great thing is some of these new cameras like the Insta 360, this can all be done on your mobile phone. So you can shoot it and edit it on the bus back or the train back to the studio or to home or to the office, depending on how complex that scene needs to be. And the simple thing is, just once you're done, just export it. So your non-linear editor will generally support 360 VR video, so it will export that as a flat file with that spatial data, and as soon as it hits the servers at YouTube or Facebook, that's when it becomes 360. So here's a look at some raw 360 footage. This is what it looks like from a 2-lens camera. So as you can see there, it's a kitchen, and one lens is catching one half of the room and the other lens is capturing the other half of the room. So these haven't been stitched yet, but that's that raw footage of what's being captured. If you had an 8 camera rig or a 6 camera rig, you're going to have 8 or 6 individual angles of that 360 scene. Now here's a flat 360 video. So this hasn't been wrapped with that spatial data yet. You could still play this back, depending on what mode you're in. If you're in Premiere Pro, it can look like this if you don't have 360 view turned on, but this is a flat view. So this is ready to be exported with that spatial data, and it'll be wrapped once again, once it hits Facebook or YouTube. But don't freak out. I said that's what your footage will look like initially, as a flat stitched image. Now the last piece here on the left, that's an idea that's looking straight down. There was a camera tripod there holding the 360 camera. Because the camera was capturing everything, it actually captured the tripod as well. So in this instance, we just patched it. So we've just put this logo over the top of it. So it's pretty straightforward. The language sounds complex and idea. It's just literally a logo on the bottom. And there's some really great tutorials around that literally walk you through 5 or 10 minutes how to create that idea. So don't let that scare you or stop you from getting started. The middle view, that's that VR view. So if you're in Oculus Rift or some VR glasses or on the YouTube mobile app and you hit that VR button, this is that VR stereoscopic mode. So you've got a left and a right field. So once you put the goggles on, your brain sees that as a full image, and then you can choose where to explore through that scene. And on the right is just an example of a title being used in a video, adding some extra information about that scene. So it's up to you how creative you want to get. There's some bonus links here, guys. We'll see if these open. So if you want some inspiration, YouTube has a great virtual reality page, and they're curating some of the best content from around the world. So have a little watch and get some ideas. So there's everything from CG, computer-generated video game type stuff. There's some great documentaries and narratives. There's lots of fantastic nature, underwater, South Pole stuff. So it's nearly limitless what you can view. There's the free solo. Looks like there's a free solo 360 where the fellow climbed Half Dome. It wasn't Half Dome. It was El Capitan in Yosemite. But yeah, lots of great links there to give you inspiration. Now the YouTube Creator Academy has some fantastic learning resources as well. These are all free. So just wait for that to load. Everyone loves a loading screen. But there's got some great little lessons in here that give you some more in-depth information to help you get started about 360 video. And lastly, this is a shout out to Ben Claremont. We follow him quite closely. He's just super fantastic at reviewing 360 video, 360 photos, a range of software and applications. So Ben's, I think, is one of the top. He's from here in Sydney, and he talks through a range of technologies, techniques, and ways to produce, edit, and present this content. Really worth a watch if that's something you wanted to get into further. Okay. Now that's nearly it, guys. Just some case studies from us. So one of our clients is Maserati. They had a brand new service center. So hopefully this loads. Bandwidth. I'll just turn the bandwidth down. That's a bad scene. You can see me in the background. In this instance, that probably should have been the start of the scene, the actual entry to the service center. And we've patched, you can see the shadows here of the tripod and the camera. It's a bit hard with that sort of light. That's why testing is critical, but we've actually patched the ugly tripod itself with their logo. And this is just a simple use case. It's just a walkthrough of their new service center. So when the customers turn up, they know what to expect. There's parking, there's reception, and out the back there, that's where your fancy, expensive car gets fixed. That's the workshop itself. And you can see here a little bit, see the front of that car distorts a little bit. That's the trade-off of these super wide angle lenses. So, yep, still not 100% perfect. I don't think it ever will be shooting such wide angle lenses. There's a little bit of distortion there on the left, and as it comes into the middle, it squares up and looks more natural. So that's one use case. One of our clients won the best Airbnb in the whole world, so we helped them market this venue, we did a range of 2D traditional videos for them that had millions of views. And then we thought, what better way than to turn this into a 360 VR tour? So this is another pretty simple use case for 360 VR. We'll just pause it. And you can see here, we're in really low quality, but this goes all the way up to 8K. So 8K uses a lot of data, so just be aware of that. But in this scene, we've put in some titles. You can see there's a full spa and shower. There's a wood fireplace. It's a Nadir of our old brand before we rebranded. But people love, for accommodation, love being able to view where they're going to go. And this is in the bush in Australia. So it's really great for people to see that experience before they go and spend their money and book. So there's a view from underneath the treehouse. They said you can explore where you are. There's bushwalking trails. There's lots of natural native wildlife. So you can see there the walking tracks, 30 minutes, easy access. And that's what it's like to look up at the treehouse. So some pretty simple use cases. You don't have to get really technical. The goal is potentially having a scene that tells that story itself. What else have we got here? We did also do the Archibald Prize in 360. This is interesting. This was a couple of years back, and this went to Facebook. So let's see if Facebook loads and how much luck we'll have. Okay. I'm going to turn the sound off. So this is just a walkthrough, and you can see the point of interest. We're controlling where people look. So you don't have to look around if you don't want to. Guys, that's kind of it.